Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and it's the Development Hell podcast. And we have the movie club back this week, and we are going to be talking about Throne of Blood because we couldn't get enough Macbeth with Joel Cohen's Macbeth. So now we got Japanese version. But we got Alex, we got Jim, and we got Vinnie, and maybe we'll have a surprise shortly. But we're going to be talking about this Akira Kurosawa film, and I guess we'll start things off how we usually do. So how many of us had watched this before?
First time.
I think this was the first time watch for all of us. Look at that. So I've definitely seen other Macbeths before, but I didn't see this one before. But Alex, what were some of your big initial thoughts?
Okay, so maybe it's incredibly biased, Shane. I'm sorry, but so I feel like I've been through the ringer, as I think other people have been with the Macbeth tragedy. My aunt teaches it every year, so she and I talk about it every year. And I've seen it. I saw it in Stratford upon Avon when I studied in England for 6 weeks. So I may be wrong. I might have misheard you. Did you by chance say that this was an adaptation of Hamlet by mistake the last time we spoke?
Did I?
Anybody else remember that?
I don't remember. I thought he did. I thought he did say Macbeth.
Okay.
I have to admit that I also subconsciously confused Macbeth and Hamlet only because of the names. Very different plays, but 2 syllables.
Not gonna lie, I kept telling Jess that it was a Macbeth adaptation, and she still thought it was going to be Hamlet when I started playing.
Okay. So then I'm not completely crazy. So I don't know.
I think society is a bit crazy because it's like we've gotten so many Hamlets. No, I think what Jess was like, so that's the one where Mel Gibson made one and tried to sleep with his mother, and I'm like, nope, that was Hamlet.
I thought Mel Gibson did a Romeo and Juliet.
No, Mel Gibson did Hamlet.
Oh yeah,
and Kenneth Branagh.
Mel Gibson did Braveheart, which is a Scottish story, but not the Scottish play.
There we go.
So speaking of Hamlet, should we do Kenneth Branagh's 4-hour adaptation at some point?
I say we do The Lion King, which is the abridged version.
There you go. That's the palatable one. So,
not gonna lie, I do love the 4-hour Kenneth Branagh one, but
I've never seen it.
I'm not gonna nominate that and make all of you sit there for 4 hours and watch Hamlet.
So I mean, it's one of those. One thing I will say, I'm sorry to take us down a lane of just Shakespeare madness, but I definitely appreciated the scope of the way it was filmed, and I definitely appreciated some of these very unique shots, very dark, very artful shots that they had in there as the movie went on. But I will admit that when I realized this was an adaptation of Macbeth, I went, because that's just, but I'll save anything else I say for them, because it's an amazing story. It's a great story. I've been through the ringer with it. That's all.
It's but it has samurai.
Oh, okay. That makes it all better. Yes.
Makes it all better. Does not make this any different of a story. And that's fair, but we'll get to that. It's because the thing is, I literally just watched the tragedy of Macbeth 2 weeks before I watched this, and I'm just at some point it's just it's Macbeth. It's the same story. Yeah. So
same beats, the same play. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
How about you, Jim? What are some of your initial thoughts for Throne of Blood?
First time viewer. Oh, we already did that. First thoughts were, I watched this in 2 different viewings. First thoughts were, oh my God, this is slow. And I kind of hated myself because I know Kurosawa was a big deal. And I can't say I really get him from this view. I think two things happen. The second half of the film is just a lot more happens in Macbeth, in Throne of Blood. A lot more is going on in the second half. But I also kind of was a little more prepped for the style, okay, which is a little bit of its time. Movies, I kind of wish I'd watched a few more movies made at this period that I could compare, because movies at this time moved a lot more slowly. We didn't have, the Avengers, we didn't have Star Wars, we didn't have Lord of the Rings. Like, the battle sequences alone are actually pretty cool. The arrow scene at the end was definitely a highlight. But as far as the story goes, like I read somewhere like the archetypal Macbeth, right? If you take away the language, which is what Shakespeare is really, that's like what we read Shakespeare for, is the English language, right? If you take the English language away, all you have left is the story, which this was my favorite Shakespeare when I was a young kid, because there's blood and magic and it's really dark and it's more fun than a lot of Shakespeare is, It was interesting to see it in a different context, I guess, is my takeaway. It was interesting to see it in Japan, in Japanese, but also cool to kind of see it. It was very theatrical. And it almost felt like I was watching it on a stage. And I, unlike Alex, have never seen Macbeth done on stage. So that was kind of cool for me to be on stage, but also flipped into like a different culture and a different language.
Awesome. How about you, Vinny?
Well, this wasn't only my first viewing of Throne of Blood, but it was actually my first Akira Kurosawa movie that I've seen, and I very much enjoyed it. I actually I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much had I not seen the tragedy of Macbeth a few weeks ago and refamiliarized myself with the story, because before this month watching Tragedy and Throne of Blood, I like the last time I ever did anything with Macbeth was read it during sophomore year of high school. So I didn't, obviously I remembered like the major points of the story before seeing Tragedy, but seeing Joel Coen's movie, I was able to get back into the story, to remember more, and that really helped me. That really helped keep me. It really helped in keeping me invested in Throne of Blood, and I'll go into more details like later on. But I thought it was one thing I thought was really interesting was how obviously with Throne of Blood coming, like being released in the 50s, that was that was black and white was the only option pretty much. And one thing that got me wondering was like both Throne of Blood and Tragedy of Macbeth, they both use like the boxy cinematography. They're both in black and white, so it got me wondering if Joel Coen's movie used Kurosawa's movie as an inspiration as to how he was going to tell this story.
That wouldn't surprise me at all, especially after watching both. You're right. Like, I'm pretty sure the vast majority of Kurosawa films are in black and white. I know like Ron, which is like his last big epic, was in color, but that was like the 80s. So, but like from my perspective on this, I guess this is the third film adaptation of Macbeth that I've seen, or at least that I can identify as Macbeth. Obviously, one's very obviously Macbeth. It's literally called Macbeth, and that's the Roman Polanski one. And I remember watching that in school and being like, there's a lot of naked old ladies in this. Because there's like a whole coven of witches and they're all naked. But I remember sitting there watching this movie and the credits are rolling at the beginning and it's like, and produced by Playboy. And like Hugh Hefner is one of the producers on the film. Actually, yeah, he bankrolled it. And I'm like,
Wow.
And you watched this in high school? They let you watch that in class?
yep.
Life sciences, man.
Yes, it was actually in biology class.
Why would you watch that in biology class?
Anatomy.
And physiology.
And physiology. There you go. Just kidding. But no, I watched it in English class.
Oh, okay.
That was a joke.
Okay.
Fun fact, it wasn't the only naked women that I got to see in English class in high school, because we did watch that, like, what is it, 60s Romeo and Juliet, where the Juliet's like topless for like a snapshot at one point. And it was,
underage Juliet, yes.
Yes. And
was that Franco Zeffirelli?
Yeah.
At that point, I definitely wouldn't have known who made the movie. But the thing is, it's like, I remember that so distinctly because my teacher's like, I'm going to tell you this. This is going to happen. And if you don't see it, I'm not rewinding this. So don't you dare ask me to. Because she had stupid 9th grade guys do that before and be like, but Miss McNamee, I missed it.
I remember.
I wish Matt was here to be like, stupid.
I love how you just called out your called out your teacher right just now.
There you go. Haddon Township High School. But anyway, so Throne of Blood. This is a gorgeous film, first of all, and like you just see it here for like the hour, 50 minutes, and just be like, ooh, and just like appreciate all the cinematography, the shot. Oh, I love the shot when they're like, but sir, the trees are moving towards us, and it cuts to the fog and the trees and everything. I'm like, dang. And I thought they made there's like some small interesting choices, like obviously I'm not worried about spoiling a play from like hundreds of years ago, but like when actually what's his name, it's obviously not Macbeth. Takatoki is standing there and all of his men just like demolish him when they all start shooting all the arrows at him, and I'm just like, holy crap. And
I think I read somewhere that those were real arrows that they shot at him.
I was going to ask you guys about that.
Filmmaking in the 50s, though.
Wow. Insane.
But like, that was intense. And I'm just like, holy crap. They like shot like 100 arrows at that guy.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. And, obviously it's very Japanese. And from like the very theatrical, like Jimmy brought up, is like it feels very theatrical, operatic kind of thing. And every shot that Kurosawa takes of Mifune just like yelling at the screen with like his big wide eyes and everything, it's just like, oh. I myself have seen quite a few Kurosawa films at this point. I think I've seen at least like 10 of them. So like I have a lot more of experience with like his filmmaking and stuff like that. And Mifune is like his guy. They did tons of films together, like to the point where I'm pretty sure he did more films than Keitel, De Niro, and Leo combined that did with Scorsese.
Damn.
Like, this was like a prolific tandem that did a lot of work together. And like he's the young upstart, like crazy one in Seven Samurai. And it's so interesting because like I was having this conversation with Jess, my fiance, while we're watching this, and because Kurosawa has gotten so much influence from other things, and he's influenced so many other things. Because like you watch the film Yojimbo, literally is Fistful of Dollars. You sit there, watch Fistful of Dollars, and I'm like, wait a minute. This is the same exact movie. Star Wars is based off of Hidden Fortress.
Oh. R2D2 and C3PO. Is that the two characters that it's based off of?
Yeah, like the two comic relief characters, and a group of people trying to save a princess from a hidden fortress. So
there you go.
It's the Death Star. But like,
wow,
that's the interesting thing where there's like all these influences, and like Kurosawa was hugely influenced by John Ford, and then hugely influenced Sergio Leone. So it all just keeps going around in circles.
That's awesome.
But obviously, like, this is a pretty accurate and on point adaptation of Macbeth, and like it hits the main points because like growing up, I had a leather-bound classic of all of Shakespeare's plays, and like I read that when I was younger, and like I've known the story for a long time, and like it hits all the main beats, and like obviously it has very like Japanese tinges to it. Like the witch is a very specific kind of like entity and representation in this film, and boy, when Takatori has that confrontation with the witch towards the end of the film, where it's just like fog machine everywhere, like hard lighting from underneath, and just like yelling at each other. I'm just like, this is so over the top, and I love every second of this.
I really enjoyed that scene, actually. Yeah.
And it's like, that's where I feel like when this film's really leaning into like that over the top operatic style that it's going for, I had a lot of fun. And like, I could definitely say like, there's definitely like, it takes its time, and it's interesting because Macbeth is this feature-length play, and like I think the Roman Polanski one's like a good almost 2.5 hours, but don't quote me on that. And then like Tragedy Macbeth's like an hour and 45 minutes, and then this is like right under 2 hours. And sitting there, I'm like watching this movie, I'm like, it does take its time. There's not like tons of like major narrative plot points throughout this movie, and it takes its time. It soaks up like the filmmaking and stuff like that. And basically for me, I'd watch Mifune acting like anything, because he's just so committed, and it's so entertaining to watch. Sorry, go ahead, Vinny.
No, I was gonna say, while we're on the topic of performances, as much as I liked Mifune, I think like I loved I'm looking at the name. Like I loved Isuzu Yamada as the Lady Macbeth character, because like from her first scene, like I know like she's supposed to like look submissive and stoic, but the way she used that to hide her intentions of I mean not hide her intentions, because she's telling Macbeth she's telling her husband what she wants to do, but just like the way how like she's able to like remain stoic, but really dole out this really chilling nature to her, like how like she has like how willing she is to have someone killed in order to gain power, and like just how, and like between that scene, the scene during the dinner when she's pretty much then in control of everything, when she's like, oh no, don't worry, my husband has too much to drink, please excuse his behavior. So she pretty much like for lack of a better phrase, like comes out of her shell like during that scene to really take charge of everything. And then her final scene, when she's like when she becomes like mentally unraveled, and like she imagines the blood on her hands, and just like how she goes from like the earlier scene of just like stoicness to just like this really like intense look of horror on her face as she's trying to wipe off this blood that she thinks she has on her hands. Like it was just like she was just so watchable in that movie. She might be my favorite character in the movie, because of how well she was able to express the emotions of like whichever scene she was in.
Making a connection back to Drive real quick. It's like, my hands are dirty, so am mine. So there you go.
I want you to do an impression of Lady Macbeth from this movie. I thought she was really good too. Her eyes, she was totally dead in the eyes through the whole thing, which was really creepy to me. I was kind of struck by, and again, it's not fair to like go back and judge old stories or old movies by like today's standards, right? But like I was reminded of how like we always shift the blame off of Adam to Eve, right? It's really easy to shift the blame off of Macbeth to his wife, but I don't know, we could have a whole conversation maybe about like how much of the blame she deserves or how much credit we should give her for being ambitious, whereas Macbeth maybe didn't have the drive to do it without her, to make this power move without her. But I thought she was super, super creepy. And I even in the final scene where we see her be a lot more expressive and emotional, where she's trying to wash her hands, which by the way, I thought was more effective used as part of the climax. Alex, you may be able to correct me. In the original play, that scene of her trying to wash the blood off her hands is like towards the middle of the play, right? Like it's in the dark at night and only like one person kind of sees her. Is that right?
I have to admit, I don't remember, but I would have guessed, you know, whenever I go back and read Shakespeare stuff, I'm always surprised at where those beats happen, but you could be right.
Didn't that scene also happen like not at the end, but like more towards the end of the movie for Tragedy of Macbeth? Like, I think, because I didn't see
Tragedy of Macbeth. I will see it, and I haven't seen the Michael Fassbender Macbeth, and I will see. I will also see. So Shane's up to 4, yeah.
If we're counting,
because in the Tragedy of Macbeth, like that scene, like I definitely remember it happening in the last 20 minutes or so.
And to be fair, Tragedy of Macbeth is like Macbeth abridged, because like they condense that into like an hour and 45 minutes, and it's like stuff happened, all in like original Shakespeare language. But the thing is, it's like this, like it's, and that's an interesting thing too, because I remember having a lot of conversations, speaking of like Shakespeare adaptations, with like West Side Story. And I remember seeing a ton of people tweeting out, like, for a second there, I thought they cut I'm So Pretty, because they put it at where it originally was, which is like much later into like the actual West Side Story play, because like the original film has it much earlier in the film, because they're like, this feels weird after people just got murdered. But like the new adaptation of it has it where it originally is. So I think that's an interesting conversation of like how to arrange scenes and where they have like impact and stuff like that.
Right.
My contribution to this is I have no idea where it originally is in the story, but like obviously I feel like that kind of thing's really well used at that climax for like the Lady Macbeth character of like, she finally cracked. And I feel like if we're going to talk about the idea of like who's really to blame, and you know, it's like takes two to tango here. These two spiraled together, and this might be an interesting comparison, but like I've spent the past couple weeks binging all of House of Cards, and I know it's not like a Macbeth adaptation, but I'm just sitting here, I'm like, wow, these two, between like Frank Underwood and Claire Underwood, and the places they will go to take power and stuff like that. And it kind of has that like Macbeth and Lady Macbeth vibe. We're kind of like at the end, I'm like, you both are just so disgusting and so terrible. I'm literally sitting here. I have the last episode of House of Cards up on my TV. I'm like so close to the end. But the thing is, it's like it's a age old like story at obviously at this point of like this power couple and what they'll push each other to do to keep power and stuff like that. And obviously it's the timeless story of corruption. And it sure got both of what's their actual name in this movie? Washizu. Lady Washizu and Toki Washizu.
Yeah. What's, the thing that I couldn't help but keep thinking about with these two is, the witch has this prophecy, and the first sort of thing comes true. And at first it's like, oh shit, that actually happened, and now they get a taste of power. And yes, I think that she's incredibly manipulative. Obviously, right? And I think she is. I think she's incredibly manipulative. But it does feel like in the original play, and it does feel like in this, there's like a force that keeps pulling them toward power hungry violence. Like it's almost like, yes, she's manipulative. But it's almost like it always feels like something is manipulating her too. And so, maybe it's the idea of gaining more power, and it's like just like when you're lusting for someone and that lust grows, it's similar to that. Or you want to control something, so now you need more control. It's like it always felt like there was something pulling them toward that. And so I don't like going back to the idea of like, who do you blame more, Lady Macbeth or Macbeth? I obviously think that in the beginning, Macbeth appears to be a good warrior, with like a moral center, and he gets easily manipulated. And then he doesn't have to do what he does, but he does it anyway. And Lady Macbeth she just keeps pushing his buttons. And so I think that they're both pushed in that direction by fate, and they just keep on falling into it. And at some point they don't have a choice.
I love that you bring up fate, because I wasn't going to bring this up at all, but like I was reminded of Greek like tragedy, Greek theater. And I know this is Shakespeare, but like, if this is an archetypal story, if this is kind of as classic a story as it could be, I thought it was kind of cool that the Japanese style of theater kind of went, to me, back to like an ancient Greek kind of theater with exaggerated features drawn on masks.
Yep.
Sorry, the lead actor's name is Mifune.
Yep.
Mifune's facial features is like a kabuki mask or like an ancient Greek mask, right? And fate is such a big part of those ancient Greek plays and tragedies and things. So I'm sure that inspired Shakespeare's writings too, but like I thought it was kind of cool that the Japanese style actually took my head back to kind of ancient Greek theater too.
Well, it's interesting because like keep making this circle here, because the witches in Macbeth are very obvious connections to like the fates from like old Greek mythology and stuff like that. And obviously they're shown in different ways in different versions of Macbeth. Like it's really interesting. Like in this one, it's like very specifically there's one entity, like, just chilling out there in the woods. And in the tragedy of Macbeth, Catherine Hunter, right? Trying to think, who plays the witch, and like she kind of embodies all three of them, kind of thing, and how they represent her. And it's all like it's very much, it's like all about the fates and these prophecies. And I don't know why, but this always gets me every time with how arrogant Macbeth gets you. It's like, those trees are never gonna walk over here, and you're just like, ha ha, get you every time.
They're bolstering his conf. They're just making him more arrogant, and so they're setting him up to fail.
It makes you wonder how he would have responded to Treebeard.
Well, you know what's really interesting? Not to go off on too much of a tangent, but in the extended editions of Lord of the Rings, Fangorn Forest literally walks to Helm's Deep. And as they cut this part out, but like in the extended edition, like all the Uruk-hai are running away from Helm's Deep because like, come on, you kind of have to wonder what the hell happened to all those Uruk-hai who were left after the Battle of Helm's Deep, because they all got murked by Fangorn Forest that literally crawled and covered the whole entire exit from Helm's Deep, and they all run into the forest and they're all dead.
I thought they filed for unemployment and went to a temp agency.
Exactly. Can you imagine? Like, it's like, what's your profession? Did you try to do this past week? Did it at Helm's Deep. Just like, but the thing is, it's like that. Like Fangorn Forest literally walked to Helm's Deep and killed all the Uruk-hai as they were running away. But like, yeah, obviously, like the Ints are literally walking tree like spirit things. But like, I don't know. I just always find it so interesting that it's like, and how it's visualized. Like this was very artful and like very interesting. Those shots of like I mentioned, like the wind and the fog and like the branches in the wind, and like it's very mystical because you can't see the people just carrying like tree branches. It's funny in Tragedy of Macbeth, it looks like a bunch of people with a bunch of fake branches walking over their heads. And
but
it's done on purpose because it looks like they're in a play.
Yeah.
So it captures like the vibe it was going for. But like, I think I always find that so interesting because it's such a great reveal. No matter how many times I see it in how many Macbeth movies, it's just like, how are they going to have those trees walking over here? And Macbeth always seems so surprised. It's just like, doesn't literally have to be that. You're thinking very small here, guy.
Yeah, he has a lot of hubris, doesn't he? Like that's this is getting more and more Greek as I think about it, but like Macbeth has a lot of hubris, and that I don't know if you could say that is his downfall. If it's his fate, to die by whomever's hand,
or like 50 million arrows getting shot at you,
which is way cooler. Let's be honest, it's way cooler.
That was insane.
That was one of the biggest things that I appreciated about this version of Macbeth was like they went a completely different direction. It was cool and like watching Tragedy of Macbeth and just seeing like Macbeth's head just like whoosh, getting chopped right off. But like look at Mifune's face when all those arrows start getting shot at him. He looked terrified. And if they were actually shooting things at him, I would be terrified too.
Yeah, it's crazy. I almost feel bad for him a little bit because, like I said, I guess shouldn't feel bad for him, but I feel bad for the situation he's in because he just got swallowed up by this whole thing. I really feel like he got swallowed up by all of it.
I think from my limited research on Kurosawa that I've done recently, he seems to be very much a humanist. So like, it seems to be in character with him, the director, to make Macbeth relatable, which I didn't really find him relatable when I was younger and reading the book,
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's like when he's just like a stuffy British guy who's just like at some point, it's like, it's interesting though, because like, a lot of other, so like one of Kurosawa's biggest films is Seven Samurai, and you have the American version of it with like the Magnificent Seven, and you take a look at the two movies. What makes Seven Samurai so much more interesting is it's much more gray in terms of how they present the characters, because like in Magnificent Seven, for the most part, they are accepted, compared to in Seven Samurai, it's like the people in this town have zero respect for these Ronin that they hired to like do this job. And at the end, they're kind of just walking away like, shit, half of us are dead. And all these people are all happy, and we're just like, well, oh well. And we walk off, and it's just like, there's a very like humanistic way of like presenting these characters in a much more complex and relatable kind of way than just like a bunch of cool gunslingers coming in and like Magnificent Seven and stuff like that. And then even more so in like Anton Fuqua's version of Magnificent Seven. But the thing is, it's like Kurosawa is like obviously really well known for like his samurai films, but like there's other films where it's just like very deeply human and relatable dramas that carry a lot of like Ikaru is a film that he has that is just about a man full of regret, trying to find meaning in what he has left in life, and before he dies, trying to make something of what he has left in his life. And like Kurosawa has such I think it's the kind of thing where it's like on the surface you bring up Scorsese and people are like, oh yeah, he makes gangster movies. Like Kurosawa just makes samurai movies,
right?
Not really. But the thing is, it's like the ones that he makes are great. But the thing is, it's like there is something very human about the characters in his stories, even though sometimes they're acted larger than life, because it would be a mistake to say that the Macbeth character in this was not acted like way big and making big decisions and stuff like that. Because like that, which is interesting because Jess used to ride horses and stuff like that. And she knows a lot about horses. She kept saying she felt so bad for the horses in this movie because everybody was like whipping those reins so much, and you could tell how uncomfortable the horses were. Because especially that one scene where I'm just gonna keep saying Macbeth. When like Mifune's character's out there on his horse, like having that confrontation with like the witch character, and he just like whipping back and forth on his horse, just like in this like crazed manner.
Just on a Zoom call.
But it's a kind of thing where it's like there's just so much energy there, and there's just like it feels like one of like a pacing big cat, just like there's just so much energy there, and what he's able to bring to the film is really interesting.
Yeah, no, I didn't think about that, but yeah, it was very theatrical. I noticed that, he was very theatrical. He was very good. He was very good. Yeah.
I guess at this point, go ahead, Alex.
Well, I was going to say, and I'll share. I just had to share, and I knew I was watching it. Well, I'm definitely going to bring that up. There were two shots that I just thought were really, really stylistic shots. One of which I never really saw anything like that before, and another one that I did see. And I'll like before, see if Shane, see if you thought about the same movie. The one shot I never saw, like, remember when he kills the soldier who brings the head of his former friend back? It was, by the way, that's one of the most despicable moments of, the Macbeth character. I mean, I don't know if that happens in the play, but he was kneeling before him. He had done this for him. And he kills him while he's on his knees for him. Just no honor at all, But I love that. I think it's when that character dies and kind of keels over and Mifune is standing above him, how that shot, you see the entire the whole room and just the black. It was like black on the bottom, the soldier in the black armor,
Mhm.
and then Mifune standing over him. That shot, for some reason, really stood out to me. I think just the symmetry of it, of the man standing over fallen body and with nothing around. There was just something really, I don't know, it was just good. And then the other shot that did remind me of a movie is, we talked about Only God Forgives briefly after we saw Drive,
Mhm.
because Wending Refn directed that. There's a shot in that movie where I won't say exactly what happens. It does involve a samurai sword, though, ironically, and this one doesn't, ironically. But Ryan Gosling, he puts his hand into like a black room, a room just like it's in a doorway, and you see a samurai sword, come out of the shadows. It's just completely dark, and then out of nowhere you see a samurai sword come in. In this movie, there's a shot where Lady Macbeth walks into remember she walks into like a dark doorway.
Well, she goes down to poison the guards, or
Oh.
not poison them, but drug them so they fall asleep.
Okay.
Technically, alcohol is poison. So yes, drug. It works for me.
But that shot, I forgot that. But if that's what she did, then obviously that makes sense why they shot it that way, because she's going out to be part of this deed, this murder. And then when she comes back in, it's like, I don't know how they do that, because it's so dark and it's almost like she disappears.
Yeah.
And then she reappears. The way they did it was just, and it really reminded me of that shot from Only God Forgives. And it was like, I have to bring that up. It's just a great shot.
There's a lot of, I could definitely see a lot of influences in Only God Forgives of like films like this, where it's just like these kind of like old like samurai films and stuff like that, and it has that kind of vibe to it. And what popped in my head with what you're just talking about in terms of that was like, it's a very different kind of setup in the tragedy of Macbeth, when Macbeth leaves Macbeth behind, where it's like they have this shot where she's going into darkness and Throne of Blood. In Tragedy of Macbeth, Frances McDormand gives the most like sassy side eye as she's walking out the door. Like, obviously they go for a very different vibe to it than with this, where it's like she's slinking out into the darkness and it's engulfing her. Like, this is, she walks out the door and she just like gives this like really like bam side eye. I'm just like, give that woman an Oscar again, number 4, just for that stare. But just kidding. I doubt that she's gonna win another Oscar for that. But it's very interesting, like the different like approaches you can go in terms of like interpreting something. And obviously, like that one was definitely played for more of like a laugh with the stare and everything. And like this was played for like a really like poignant shot of like a very artful shot. And damn, that's brutal when it's just like those guys are drunk and then like they wake up and Mifune's just like, ah! Like, how dare you? And just like come in there and just like stab the hell out of them. It's just like all those guys did was be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, again, it's fate.
There you go. They drew some bad fate on that one. Just like, their boss gets murdered and then they just get blamed for it. Not only get blamed for it, but then they just get like demolished by this guy just coming in and like stabbing the hell out of them. But the thing is, like, it's interesting because the more we talk about this, I'm like, it's just running through my head all the different ways I've seen these scenes played out. And I think one of the things I appreciated most about Throne of Blood is like, it's very like iconic looking shots and really artful ways of portraying all of this. And Like and I still feel like it balances having some depth with it along with the artful filmmaking, because I think the Michael Fassbender Macbeth, I think alienated a lot of people because a lot of it was just for like art. And I don't know how much a whole lot of people like really felt connected to the story and stuff like that and the way that it was represented. But this one, it's just like we mentioned before, it's like a very human approach to things. And like, you could, even if it is a little bit over the top in terms of the acting, it's like, you could feel that emotion. You could feel that fear on Mifune's face when he knows he's totally going to die and having all those arrows just shot at him.
And you just made me think, have there been any, because there's been a lot of like adaptations, have there been any altered reality versions of like, what if Macbeth succeeded? Like, have there been any movies or stories? I actually thought when I was watching it, it'd be an interesting video game. Yeah, because if you ever grew up playing Zelda Ocarina of Time, the future part of the game is basically like, we lost and now we have to bring that guy down. Like that's what it made me think of. Like, what if Macbeth succeeded? That'd be kind of a cool video game where you had to like, you know what I mean?
Macbeth is Ganondorf.
Yeah, Macbeth is Ganondorf, and obviously he succeeded. The castle's this big black thing in the sky, and
Yeah, because from what I remember, it's when he like grabs the Master Sword and he's automatically like turns into like an adult Link, and then there's just like zombies and everywhere. Just like, what the hell's going on here?
It's basically like half apocalypse when you come out of it. So that's I wondered, like, has anyone tried to do anything subversive with it?
That's interesting. I don't know. Not to muddy the waters again with Hamlet, but like, I know there's a movie that came out recently that was like from Ophelia's perspective.
Well, and then there's also the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead.
I've not heard of that one, but
like, yeah, like it's a play that where you have the story of Hamlet, but told from the perspective of these two minor characters from the original play.
It's like, why is Hamlet get all these fun like reimaginings and stuff? Where's Macbeth reimagined?
Yeah, let's reimagine the dark one, or
I've seen like the title's obviously influenced by the play Macbeth, but there's a movie called Lady Macbeth.
Yes.
And like,
great movie.
It is. It has like tinges of the themes and the ideas of Macbeth, but like it's not like an actual adaptation. And that's Florence Pugh in it, isn't it?
Her breakout performance.
Yeah. Florence Pugh in everything now. But the thing is, it's like, I don't know, that would be interesting to see like Dark World. What if Macbeth won?
Yeah.
The world we live in. And it's just like the child that's predicted to be the next king like comes after him, kind of thing, and we get that kind of story. Let's greenlight it. Let's make that script right now. But I guess at this point, does anybody have any other thoughts, points that they wanted to bring up about Throne of Blood?
No, I said everything I wanted to say.
All right. So to me, it occurs to me, all this talk about Elvis, that if Shakespeare, right, who made he was the original inspiration. If Shakespeare is Elvis, then Kurosawa is the British invasion, man. He's taken all of that influence from the Western world and bringing it back across. So then if, I don't know, if Joel Cohen would be like Aerosmith or something, I don't know if you want to really carry that metaphor. Kurosawa is the Japanese invasion. There you go.
That's cool.
I do like really diving into like the influences of his filmography. It's so interesting to think about like how big of a fan of Western filmmaking he was. And then a whole bunch of other people were like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm like, it's like somebody stealing somebody's homework who stole their homework from somebody else. And it's just like going all the way back to like John Ford influenced Kurosawa, who then influenced Leone, who then influenced 50 million other people like Tarantino. So, and that's I'm not going to get too deep into a Tarantino conversation because that could go on for a very long time.
We almost went a whole video without talking about it. You know, you ruined it. We almost went it. I mean,
almost did it.
It's
and
usually me.
Then I ruined it. But the thing is, it's like, it's interesting to see like those threads and those influences as they go by, and like being able to see these kinds of things pop up in other film. And because the thing is, it's like, you can talk about making original films all you want and wanting more original things, but like after a while, people are just going to be influenced by other people. Like even like doing all these Scorsese films that I've watched, and like he's had films where it was like Cape Fear was like, I love Hitchcock, and I'm going to make a Hitchcock movie.
Sure.
And basically, it's like you could just feel those kinds of influences. And I hope that those who are watching this video who haven't watched a whole lot of Kurosawa goes and checks out a whole bunch of Kurosawa, which I think there's at least a decent amount on HBO Max to check out.
And if we're gonna bring up Tarantino, I just have to point out that like he was not only influenced by Leone, but also strongly by Hong Kong kung fu movies of like the 1980s, late 70s, which all of those guys watched Kurosawa for sure. Vinnie.
Vinnie, did you say something, man?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And before we get down too many rabbit holes, I think we said quite a bit about Throne of Blood. And next time, we're going to take things and now for something completely different. So next month, we're going to be watching Lilo and Stitch. Because my God, that movie is 15 years old, right?
Yep. It'll be
Wow.
15. It'll be 15 in June.
Damn.
I don't like that. But I do like Lilo and Stitch. I'm excited to talk about it. And speaking of Elvis.
No, I'm sorry, not 15. It'll be 20. It'll be 20 years old in June. I'm sorry.
Now I feel even older. Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like, because that was Lilo and Stitch came out in like that strange time for Disney, where it was like, you know, the 90s were like amazing, and then they're kind of like, what are we gonna make next?
Well, you know, it was at that time where like Disney was slowly, like they were slowly transitioning away from 2D animated movies to like all computer animated movies, because I remember, you know, Lilo and Stitch, that was 2002, and I mean, like, that was a big success, but then Treasure Planet came out later that year. But I mean, I don't think that was because of people's loss of interest in 2D animation. I think it was just one of those movies that was kind of just like a hard sell to audiences, because, you know, it's, you know, Treasure Island, but
In space.
Yes.
Sounds like a good sell to me.
But you know what, Treasure Planet, I mean, it was like I mean, I haven't seen it since middle school, but I remember it being, you know, a pretty enjoyable movie.
And if you want more of this Disney history lesson, tune in next time when we talk about Lilo and Stitch. But this time, Alex, Jim, and Vinny, and Shane here, thanking all of you for always tuning in and supporting the Development Hell podcast.